Hello and welcome to the Poetry Pea Podcast with me, Patricia. Are you ready for another posy of poetry? What am I talking about? Let me tell you. I did some research to find a collective noun for poetry, but I couldn't find anything. And as posy sounds like the French word for poetry, I decided to go with that. Anyway, today we're looking at lyrical poetry again. Specifically, lyrical haiku and senryū. Back in episode 15 of the series, I set out what I was looking for in lyrical poems. And I said something to the effect of, I'm looking for some emotional connection to its content, and that's often enhanced by its musicality. The rhythm of the spoken word can add so much to a poem. And I said then that my gut was telling me it's gone AWOL from the toolkit of many poets attempting haiku today. But to be clear, I really don't want my emotions blatantly manipulated, as I sometimes feel poets trying to write haiku do. That's not what I mean by lyrical haiku. Nor is haiku written in an overtly Western style. And I was racking my brains how to describe that. Maybe to say that a haiku doesn't need an abundance of adjectives, nor verbs. But I think the main difference is that as haiku poets, you and I don't tell, we show. So let me illustrate what a haiku doesn't do with a piece I absolutely love from the work of the poet Rupert Brooke. It's called The Hill. I've almost certainly read it to you before, but I hope you don't mind me repeating it. So, a little bit from Rupert Brooke's The Hill. Breathless, we flung us on the windy hill, laughed in the sun, and kissed the lovely grass. You said, through glory and ecstasy we pass. Wind, sun, and earth remain. The birds sing still. When we are old. And when we die, all's over that is ours, and life burns on through other lovers, other lips, said I. Heart of my heart, our heaven is now, is one. And you know, I want to cry every time I read that, knowing that he didn't get to live out a full life, because he died during the First World War. Anyway, in that particular piece there are lots of verbs and adjectives, and although Brooke is giving us a lot to digest, to mull over, he's not leaving us much space for interpretation. Yes, he's showing us stuff, but he's telling us stuff too. And then I got to wondering how you could write this poem as a haiku. And I didn't get anywhere with that. But if you do, send them to me. Maybe I will have enough for another podcast. You never know. So, we continue our exploration of lyrical haiku and senryū in English. Although, in fairness, I'm going to go back to Japan shortly, but only briefly. Today, I'm going to look at work written before the year 2000. It's an entirely arbitrary division, but it gives us a way into the material. Later, in the next episode of Poetry Pea, I plan to see how more recent work compares. Will I reach a conclusion? Who knows? But if you have thoughts, write and tell me. And of course, I may need help, in which case, do you have any favourite haiku poets writing after the year 2000 who you would describe as lyrical haiku or senryū poets? With citations, of course. I include senryū as I've got another question rolling around in my mind. Can senryū be lyrical? But to begin, let's turn to a poet whose work largely sits within that earlier period, Masayo Suzuki. Her poetry was recommended by Keith Everts and Sebastian Rivon. Thank you very much, chaps. She lived between 1906 and 2003, and much of her haiku was written pre-2000. I'm going to read you some, but in some cases I'm using translations which were done almost certainly pre-2000, but not published until that year. And I'm going to start with one that I've found a couple of translations for, just to show that the translation can make a difference. I have stolen a man, but never a thing of value. I roll up the bamboo blind. I have stolen a man, but never a thing of value. I roll up the bamboo blind. And that's Suzuki, translated by Emiko and Gerger. I may have stolen men, but I have never stolen a thing, winding up the rattan blind. I may have stolen men, but I have never stolen a thing, winding up the rattan blind. And that one was translated by Susumu Takiguchi. And according to Gabby Grieve on her website, link in the show notes, rolling up the bamboo blind may suggest the aftermath of a night of love. A court lady rolling up a bamboo blind on a snowy landscape is a classic subject, going back to a poem by Po Chui, apparently. Bamboo blinds also figure prominently in the tale of Genji and the Pillow Book of Lady Sai Shonagon. And Suzuki may be making an allusion to classic Japanese literature. I'd have thought she probably was, wouldn't you? Anyway, let's hear more of her poetry. Longing for love, I place a single strawberry in my mouth. Longing for love, I place a single strawberry in my mouth. Suzuki, translated by Emiko and Gerger. Deep inside the kimono, I have hidden his love letter, sunbathing. Deep inside the kimono, I have hidden his love letter, sunbathing. Suzuki, translated by Susumu Takiguchi. My love affair lies in the passing autumn wind. My love affair lies in the passing autumn wind. Suzuki, translated by Susumu Takiguchi. And this is one that Sebastian Rivon particularly recommends. Spring loneliness. Even the stone I toss falls short of the surf. Spring loneliness. Even the stone I toss falls short of the surf. And that was the last of our Suzuki poems, this time translated by Emiko and Gerger. Right, before we move on to haiku writers from the West, a quick bit of housekeeping. No Palace update yet, as I had to record this before the second leg of the semi-final. They did, however, go into it rather comfortably after winning the first leg 3-1. I'm sure you're all sitting on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens. Don't worry, I'll keep you posted. I'm going to run through your missions for the week at the end of the podcast today, but a quick favour first. The current microphone I use for presentations I make on YouTube has decided it's no longer up to the task, letting both you and me down in equal measure. I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. So I'm in need of a replacement for future video recordings. These things, as it turns out, are not cheap. So if you're able to support the show by taking out a membership, buying us a coffee or making a donation via PayPal, it would be genuinely appreciated. By me, certainly. By your ears, definitely. It all helps to keep the sound from resembling a distant conversation through a sock, which I think we can all agree is not ideal. Now, which poets have I chosen to illustrate lyrical haiku / senryū in the West? As you will see, I did have some help along the way. Let's start with Ruth Yarrow. Is this Ruth Yarrow's most famous poem? It's certainly the one that introduced me to her work, and again, Sebastian recommends it, saying of it that the silence and exquisite calmness is not only created by the meaning and layout, or the order of her words, but also by the musicality of the verse. After the garden party, the garden. After the garden party, the garden. Ruth Yarrow, from Wind Chimes, issue 7. And now a couple from her first book, No One Sees the Stems. Spring ocean in fog. Invisible waves and gull cries swelling together. Spring ocean in fog. Invisible waves and gull cries swelling together. Moonlit ochre leaves, floating in blackness. No one sees the stems. Moonlit ochre leaves, floating in blackness. No one sees the stems. And one last one from Ruth. Equinox. Slant of sun gilds the edge of the cellar stair. Equinox. Slant of sun gilds the edge of the cellar stair. And that one by Ruth Yarrow was in Frog Pond, Volume 10, Issue 3. I don't think you could have a podcast on lyrical haiku without something from Peggy Willis-Lyles. And she was recommended by a couple of people, Katie Montagna and Tony Williams. I think most of you will know this one. Summer night. We turn out all the lights to hear the rain. Summer night. We turn out all the lights to hear the rain. Peggy Willis-Lyles. Cicada. Volume 4, 4. But do you know these? Bitter wind. The hand that cups the flame aglow. Bitter wind. The hand that cups the flame aglow. Peggy Willis-Lyles from Frog Pond, Volume 9, 1. Blue sage. A man stoops at the pond's edge. nothing in his hands. Blue sage. A man stoops at the pond's edge. Nothing in his hands. Peggy Willis Lyles. Frog Pond, Volume 13, Issue 1. And the next couple were particularly recommended to us by Katie Montagna. October Twilight. The scarecrow in the garden drops its other glove. October Twilight. The scarecrow in the garden drops its other glove. Peggy Willis Lyles, Modern Haiku, Volume 10, 3. Still at the edge of its shadow, the frog. Still at the edge of its shadow, the frog. Peggy Willis Lyles, from her book Still at the Edge, and it's still available online. Check out the show notes. We are a little girl heavy thus far, and lest you get the impression that only women can write lyrical haiku, let's hear from some chaps. Nick Virgilio, an esteemed haiku and senryū poet who died in 1989. His most famous poem was one of his earliest published ones, and you know, sometimes I think many of us do our best work early in our writing career. I look back on some of my earliest works and often think they are some of my best. Anyway, it's not about me. This is about Nick Virgilio and his poem, which you surely know. Lily, out of the water, out of itself. Lily, out of the water, out of itself. Nick Virgilio from Selected Haiku. I don't honestly think this is one of my favourite poems. For all it's the most famous example of the form, well, maybe not the most, but certainly a very famous example of the form. And I'd question whether it is a haiku. There could be a case to be made that it's senryū. If we take Anita Virgil's definition of senryū, that is, simplistically speaking, if it is a man within the world, it's haiku. If it's the world within the man, it's senryū. Well, I have a feeling this is actually the world within the man. Is it a metaphor for how we, you and I, would feel when we're out of our comfort zone? Over to you to disagree with me. You know how. My email box is ready and waiting for you. Now, many of you will be familiar with some of his other pieces, but just in case, I have a few more for you. In the singles bar, magnifying loneliness, her thick eyeglasses. In the singles bar, magnifying loneliness, her thick eyeglasses. Nick Virgilio, Selected Haiku. Do you think it's the abundance of S sounds that give this poem a lyrical feel? Heat before the storm. A fly disturbs the quiet of the empty store. Heat before the storm. A fly disturbs the quiet of the empty store. Nick Virgilio, Selected Haiku. And this next one is about his brother's burial, I believe. His brother Lawrence died in the Vietnam War. Flag-covered coffin, The shadow of the bugler slips into the grave. Flag-covered coffin. The shadow of the bugler slips into the grave. Nick Virgilio, selected haiku. I think he hit the sweet spot with that poem. Emotional, yes, but it's not too sugary, is it? And I certainly don't feel he's manipulating or playing with my emotions. The sack of kittens sinking in the icy creek increases the cold. The sack of kittens sinking in the icy creek increases the cold. Nick Virgilio, Haiku West, issue 1.1. In an article by Tom Clausen, Virgilio is quoted as saying of this poem that emotion is expressed on the sensory level. That's the essence of haiku. One form of existence passes into another, warmth into cold, living into non-living. The organic returns to the inorganic. We too are involved in this eternal transition. We too are in the sack, sinking in the icy creek. The doctrine of Mahayana Buddhism holds that life and the individual are merely temporary manifestations of being. On the manuscript, the shadow of a butterfly finishes the poem. On the manuscript, the shadow of a butterfly finishes the poem. And that's the last one I have by Nick Virgilio. But I do have more poetry from pre-2000, which I think will illustrate that lyricism I've been trying to find. Morning surf. A dog fills the sky with seagulls. Morning surf. A dog fills the sky with seagulls. Jim Boyd, from the Haiku Anthology, edited by Cor Vanden Heuvel. Moonless thunder. Yellow dandelions flash in fields of rainy grass. Moonless thunder. Yellow dandelions flash in fields of rainy grass. Allen Ginsberg, from Haiku in English, edited by Cation, Rowland and Burns. Home early. Your empty coat hanger in the closet. Home early. Your empty coat hanger in the closet. Gary Hotham, The Haiku Anthology. Deep in my notebook, a lily pad floats away. Deep in my notebook, a lily pad floats away. Matsuo Allard, Haiku in English. Silent deer. The sound of a waterfall. Silent deer. The sound of a waterfall. Leonard D. Moore, from the Haiku Anthology. Nice to have one from Leonard. A good friend to the podcast. Night of the new moon. I crave nothing, no one, frogs croaking, croaking. Night of the new moon, I crave nothing, no one, frogs croaking, croaking. Margaret Chula, from Haiku in English. Lilac scent, coming upon the remains of the old chimney. Lilac scent, coming upon the remains of the old chimney. Betty Drevniok, from Haiku Moment, an anthology of contemporary North American haiku, edited by Bruce Ross. Across the still lake, through upcurls of morning mist, the cry of a loon. Across the still lake, through upcurls of morning mist, the cry of a loon. O. Mabeson Southard, the Haiku Anthology. Without a full stop you run, childhood, a country, with no paragraphs. Without a full stop, you run, childhood, a country, with no paragraphs. Caroline Gourlay, Haiku in English. Snow-laden bushes, one bent to the ground and one swaying in the wind. Snow-laden bushes, one bent to the ground and one swaying in the wind. O. Mabeson Southard, the Haiku Anthology. Listening. After a while, I take up my axe. Listening. After a while, I take up my axe. Rod Wilmot, Haiku in English. On the stroke of noon, the snow gown of the cypress is turning to rags. On the stroke of noon, the snow gown of the cypress is turning to rags. David Cobb, from the magazine Iron. Yellow trout lilies, in and out of the boathouse, nesting swallow. Yellow trout lilies, in and out of the boathouse, nesting swallow. Charles Dickinson, Haiku Moment. Spring breeze, her breasts sway over the porcelain tub. Spring breeze, her breasts sway over the porcelain tub. Anita Virgil, from the Haiku Anthology. In winter silence, oyster catchers swoop down on the cold sand. In winter silence, oyster catchers swoop down on the cold sand. Jack Hill, from Blithe Spirit, issue 5/2. Waking from a dream, only the sound of snowflakes on the window pane. Waking from a dream, only the sound of snowflakes on the window pane. Nick Avis, the haiku moment. And I'm going to end with a little poem by Wally Swist, a poet I so much enjoy reading, but sadly we don't see enough of. I aim to come back to his poetry another day. The flatbed of baled hay rocks with the tractor's pull. Indian summer. The flatbed of baled hay rocks with the tractor's pull. Indian summer. Wally Swist, the Haiku Anthology. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. Did you find those poems inspiring? I hope so. And next week we'll be back in the land of lyrical poetry for more contemporary haiku and senryū. And remember, I need some help from you. Send me emails. Do you have some favourite lyrical haiku or senryū written post-2000? I'll need citations, of course. You can include any senryū you feel fits the bill, because one of the questions I'm mulling over is whether senryū can be lyrical. I would genuinely like to know how many of you feel, as perhaps I do, that we're in a phase of haiku and senryū when lyricism is frowned upon. And if so, where has that come from? Tell me your thoughts. I won't use them in a podcast unless I've asked and received your consent to do so. Don't worry. And last but not least, I need a new microphone, and if you can help with a membership or a donation, it will definitely be gratefully received. Details on the website. Till next week, keep writing, and if your haiku and senryū aren't lyrical, have a bash at changing your style and see how it goes. Ciao!